Hi, I'm Teresa Jurgens, and I'm really interested in talking to you today about tools for innovation management systems. My contact information is on this slide. You can reach me at info@globalnpsolutions.com or text me at 281-787-3979. So let's get started. So let's talk about what does risk mean. In the PMBOK version 7, the Project Management Body of Knowledge, 7th edition, there's a pretty long and complex definition of risk. It is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on one or more project objectives. This seems like a pretty complicated definition to me. So I looked up what risk means in dictionary.com, and that is an exposure to the chance of injury or loss, or a hazard or dangerous chance. This is simpler, but it feels to me like this is catastrophic or has only really major bad consequences. And as project managers and product managers, we often think about risk as sometimes major events and sometimes minor events. And even, again, back to the PMBOK, it might be a positive effect on the project, although I think we're generally trained to think about risk from a negative standpoint. So I wanted to back up a little bit and think about what risk means. And what I'd like you to do is to close your eyes and relax and just think about nothing for a moment and take a couple of deep breaths and kind of clear your head. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what risk really means to you personally. Think about what risk means when you tell your kids, don't do that, it's risky. Or think about when you relay a story to someone and you say, I took a big risk, but it paid off. So now think about the characteristics of those circumstances when you think about what risk means. And as we translate what risk means on a day-to-day basis with our kids and our families, or when we're telling stories, we can translate that to what risk means on a project. So in a project, risk often means a schedule delay. And that can be a schedule delay of 1% or 2% or 25%. Again, there's a scale to the risk from a minor to a major impact. And usually schedule delays result in budget overruns. We could also have errors by our contractors or team members. And we could also have the situation where we have poorly trained or ill-functioning teams. They're not having the right skills at the right time. I want to talk about product development and the risks in different project management processes. And we're going to use an example here of talking about risk that involves a customer. And when we talk about the 4 different categories of risk, this helps us to select a different project management process. And then we're going to dive into which tool do we use with each of those different processes. So in the first area, we talk about customers, and we talk about the risk of a customer from who is the end user. What marketing channels are available for us to reach that customer? Is there a distribution channel that is of impact? And what are the demographics of that particular customer base that we're trying to reach? And then we talk about financial risk. And of course, every project and every product has an interest in being financially successful. So we talk about elements of risk that contribute to financial risk that would be the development cost, maybe the payback period. What are our sales revenues and our volumes from the particular new product that we're developing? What does the competition look like? How does the industry look from a competitive standpoint? And then we talk also about technical risks, and this helps us to choose different processes as well. because we need to understand the risk from a technology standpoint. Will we manufacture the product? Will we import the product? Do we have the right technology? Or do we need to develop new technologies? Do you need partners? Do your vendors have to develop new technologies in order for the product to be assembled and functioning? And then we want to talk also about the people risk. And in people, we talk about here between teams and management. Are the right people available at the right team with the right skill sets at the right time? And what is the relationship between management and that working team? Do we have contractors or gig workers? They can influence the success of our project as well. So as we move forward in this short talk, I want you to continue to think about risk from a standpoint of customer, financial, technical, and people. And we're going to match those to different project management processes that are effective for product development. And then we'll talk about a primary tool for each of those different processes that will help you to make sure that the product is launched successfully. So as we continue to talk about risk, I want to also talk about some tools for innovation. And what we are going to talk about today in this short segment is the different processes we can use to manage innovation projects. Waterfall or staged and gated is a predictive methodology. We also will talk about Scrum, which is the most common implementation of Agile, and then two hybrid methods. One is WAGILE, yes, it's a made-up word between waterfall and Agile, and then the hybrid process of Lean New Product Development. The goal of hybrid processes is to take the best of waterfall and the best of Agile and customize the approach to project management for your product development risk categories. And again, we're going to talk about the primary tool that would manage innovation with each system. If you want to take a look at all of the tools that we talk about for each of these processes, I suggest you get a copy of the Innovation Process Book available on Amazon. So in a waterfall process, we're going to talk about the different categories of risks that we have. Waterfall processes are useful for very simple projects. For example, an incremental improvement of an existing product. The reason these work well is because we know both what and how to develop that new product. And that gives us security for financial and technical risk. So in the figure, we see that financial and technical risk are low, meaning that the requirements uncertainty of what we want to do is low and how we want to do it is low. We understand the financial benefits also because this is an incremental improvement of an existing product typically. And we also can recognize some potential pitfalls. In this case, product features are often fixed up front in a waterfall or predictive or staged and gate process. And that gives us some risk of the customer. Customers might change during the development period, especially if it takes a long time between ideation and commercialization. And the typical project also involves handoffs between stages. In that case, then, our people risk is medium because we can have missed information or having to do rework between those different stages. And we all have heard the bad things about waterfall processes. They are considered slow and bureaucratic, lack flexibility, and indeed can lack responsiveness to changing market needs. So let's take a look at the primary tool that we use in a waterfall process for product development. Key decisions in staged and gated processes use a gate review. And I think that this gate review and the gate scorecard is probably the most important tool in a waterfall process. I do want to caution that we want to use entry gates versus exit gates. In an exit gate, we have said this work that has been done is great, let's move on to the next stage. An entry gate says, okay, yeah, let's take a look at what the work has been done, but we also want to understand and validate that the work to be done in the next stage is appropriate for this product to maintain the profitability goals, the customer goals, the market goals that we have, the other strategic goals. So on the GATE scorecard, we'll look at those categories. And this particular example shows things like strategic alignment, technical feasibility, product profitability, competitive advantage, supply chain, distribution, customer value. You should customize your GATE scorecard to match your stage work as well as standard information that is required within the company. However, I would caution to keep the GATE scorecard simple between low, medium, and high. We can total those scores. You can have all of the gatekeepers submit their own scorecard, or you can have a discussion in a meeting where the gatekeepers collectively and collaboratively determine the score. Typically then these scores are compared from product development initiative to another product development initiative, and the one with the best scores would then advance. Okay, so let's switch gears to Agile, all the way at the other end of the spectrum. And Scrum is perhaps the most commonly implemented methodology for Agile. It is used for IT and software projects and was developed particularly for IT and software projects. And what's the advantage is that you can continually change and revise the product even after launch. So of course, one of the drawbacks happens to be that Agile and Scrum are not quite so appropriate to products that are constructed and don't have an opportunity for change. Say you're constructing a high-rise building. Having flexibility during the construction phase might be useful for the team, but it's very, very difficult to implement once you have steel in the ground. The benefits of Agile and Scrum processes then are that we have very close interactions with a customer. Typically, that customer is represented in an Agile or Scrum process through the product owner role. And there are frequent meetings that allow that customer role through the product owner to be represented to the development effort. Another benefit is that teams, our people, are given wide berth of what they want to do and how they want to do it. They're granted a high degree of autonomy, and the work is done in sprints, typically 2 to 4 week time periods, so that the development can be both incremental and flexible. The pitfalls with Scrum processes, especially for projects that involve product work that is both hardware and software oriented, is that there's a lack of definition of done. So the search for perfection becomes too heavy to complete a project in a very quick time period. And part of that is because the final product design is often unknown at the beginning of a project. And again, we talked about the pitfall of Scrum is very difficult for a tangible product, especially a large scale investment. So because of these characteristics of a Scrum process, I would categorize the customer and people risk as medium and the financial and technical risk as a little bit higher. The primary tool in a Scrum process is a Scrum Board, and I think this is a fantastic tool, and I recommend it for any project that is involving product development effort and relatively small teams or a few number of sub-teams working on a larger project. The Scrum Board shows us the product description. It shows us the goals of a sprint, that incremental time period in which incremental work is produced. It shows us who's working on which tasks and the status of those tasks, whether they're still to be done, whether they're in progress or they're finished, and if there's any blockers or roadblocks or obstacles for that individual or that task to be completed. Another element on the Scrum board that is really good is the burn down chart. So rather than counting up the dollars and that we've spent, we count how many of the agreed upon tasks have been conducted during that particular time period of the sprint. A caution that can happen is that as these tasks are not completed, as there are more tasks not completed, they run into and roll over to the next sprint. So we end up with a growth in the product backlog, in the sprint backlog, and so the number of tasks that need to be done kind of balloon a bit from sprint to sprint. Part of that comes from one of the great benefits of Scrum and Agile is a retrospective. But the problem comes when people and teams skip this very important step in the process. A retrospective allows the team to look back and say, what went really well during this time period? How did we work together well? How did we accomplish our goals effectively? And what tools and processes helped us through to be effective? Skipping that step is very detrimental to success of a project. So next we're going to talk about a hybrid process, which is the WAGILE process. Again, WAGILE is a made-up word that blends waterfall and agile, and it is a hybrid process because it's in between and taking the best of the discipline from waterfall and the best of flexibility from agile. So this can be used for any new product project, whether they're complicated or complex projects. And generally, we know what and how we're going to do the work. We know what product we'd like to develop. And so this gives us sort of a medium risk level for financial and technical risks. The benefit of WAGILE is that it requires at every gate review to have customer feedback, real customer inputs. There cannot be a gate pass to that next stage of work without real customer feedback. So that gives us a little bit lower risk from the customer standpoint. And we have a fairly low risk on the people side because our teams are autonomous and consistent. So the same group of people start the project and work through the project to the end. There are some potential pitfalls with WAGILE, just like any process. In particular, there's a risk of turning to waterfall, getting gate creep in so that at a specific gate, the reviewers require higher levels of information. So at a equivalent of a gate 2, they're requiring gate 3 or gate 4 information. That reduces your flexibility and increases the time of production for working through the product development effort. And again, the lack of definition of done or search for perfection, that's an agile risk, and that can happen, of course, in a hybrid process where there are iterations within a stage to advance that particular stage and advance the product within that element to the next phase. And then there is a failure to fully explore design thinking options. And our primary tool for WAGILE is design thinking. So when we talk on the next slide about design thinking, keep in mind that you will always want to fully explore those options to be effective in a WAGILE process. So the primary tool in a WAGILE process is the design thinking cycle. There are many, many ways to illustrate the design thinking process. One of the most popular is the 5-hexagon illustration from the Stanford D School. This particular illustration builds off some work from PDMA many, many years ago, in which we take the customer empathy and then we have a two-step process that is identify the problem and solve the problem. And we discover customer needs, we fully define them, we iterate within that arena, and when we think we have a solution that will work, or an idea of a solution that will work, we create a prototype, we test and evaluate that, and all the time we're testing against our customer needs and our customer wants. So the design thinking cycle could be incomplete in that we fail to, for example, create enough prototypes to find a good answer for our customer. And of course, as we talked on the prior slide, we can drift to the bad habits of either waterfall or Scrum in any hybrid process. Let's talk about the hybrid process that is called Lean New Product Development, or Lean NPD. This builds off of the Toyota production system and lean production. And again, like any hybrid process, it's useful for any new product project, regardless of complexity or complication. The key idea in lean new product development is to reduce waste. So again, we often know what we want to do and how we want to do it, so our requirements uncertainty is low and our technical uncertainty is relatively low. And lean will give us, because of the process itself, a reduced risk from a financial standpoint. The benefits of implementing lean new product development in a large-scale manufacturing process is one of the best aspects of using this product development methodology. It's also integrated tightly with quality management because lean is built off of the Toyota production system, and lean new product development uses that idea to reduce waste. And the potential pitfalls we might have with lean new product development comes from the customer side and from our people side. On the customer side, because we're so relentlessly focused on eliminating waste, we may end up with more of an internal focus versus an external focus. And in large-scale manufacturing, sometimes what happens is producers will focus on what a distributor or a wholesaler needs rather than what the retail customer or the final end user needs. And so customer risk from an end user perspective can be increased. From a people standpoint, sometimes the people, again, are so focused on eliminating waste that they have an internal focus rather than an external focus, and production methodologies can become a roadblock to implementing new ideas because sometimes new ideas are costly and may have some learning cycles that include waste. So just be careful in those two arenas. The best tool that I know of in hybrid lean new product development comes from changing altogether from heavyweight staged and gated systems or from no planning that can happen in agile processes to some very collaborative team workshops. And this is shown here as a simple example where there are planning workshops, prototyping workshops, and production workshops. And a core team is identified prior to the implementation of the product development effort. And there are boundaries put in place that allow senior management to have confidence and trust that the team will work within financial boundaries, technical boundaries, resource consumption. So this is a really good way when you have autonomous teams and high trust and, again, complicated, complex, or simple or more sophisticated product development efforts. The biggest risk that I see with hybrid lean new product development, just like any hybrid process, is that you can slide backwards into a waterfall type of process. What I have seen happen in one of my client companies was we had a very nice workshop put together. It grew beyond the capability of decision making, and it grew into a very heavyweight process that turned into more of a gate review rather than a collaborative workshop that pushed work out to the development effort and turned into a decision-making meeting. So you just want to be very careful with the people that are involved to make sure that they do have a flexible mindset to go forward. So today we've talked about risks and tools in innovation management systems, and we've talked about 4 different project management processes that are effective for product development. And you want to select and customize that project management process based on the risk factors that you have. Those risk factors I've identified in key areas as the customer risk, financial risk, technical risk, and the people risk. We also talked about a key tool that is useful for managing each of those project management processes. So in waterfall processes, the gate review is a key tool and aids in decision making. In Scrum, the Scrum Board is a fantastic tool to keep the teams on track and allow communication with management. And then we talked about two hybrid processes, the WAGILE process and the design thinking cycle that allows iterations within a stage is the key tool to make sure you always have effective, constructive feedback from your customers. And then the final process we just talked about was Lean New Product Development and the collaborative workshops among the team members that bring marketing inside, customer information inside, financial risk from a development cost standpoint is a really great tool to implement in order to reduce waste in the product development process. Again, if you want to check out the book, the Innovation Process book, at Amazon, you can get a list of all the tools that are recommended for each of these different project management processes, and you'll get a full description of each project management process in that book. I hope you'll grab your copy to learn more, and feel free to contact me at info@globalnpsolutions.com or send me a text at 281-787-3979 and we can set up a chat for digging into your process. So thank you very much for listening to this short summary of risk and tools in innovation management systems, and I hope to hear from you soon.